pets to some other, society that is so far advanced that we're nothing more than ants?
Well, it kind of appears that way, and I've seen it be like that, because there is a science behind absolutely everything. Now, we have physical science, we have mental science, and we have spiritual science. Physical science, we think we figured out, Christ, we got cars that do 240 miles an hour, and the mental science, that involves hypnosis and photographic memory and things like that. But for spiritual science, we have not a clue as mankind. But there is a science to it. And that science is based on a language expressed in ones and zeros. But also, there is a way we can communicate with that computer or the guy that is running the computer, and we're not using the right language. And that is actually worth talking about, because we live in a self-aware, self-conscious universe. And the language that we communicate with this universe with is not one of words, it's one of feeling, emotion, colorful images, and things like that. And we are creators ourselves, but we have forgotten how to use the language and the power that is brought by that language. And it is really simple. All we have to do is to use that language of emotion and feeling when we ask for things. This is what religions don't know how to talk about, and government, of course, will never tell you. But there is a way we can communicate, and that's what we're doing. Me and my partner here, Nori Love, we created a mastermind group. And I would invite people to join us, because we are doing some phenomenal things with this mastermind. So send us an email at themastermindconnection@gmail.com. And we'll get some information back to you so you can see how, you can participate if you're interested. But there is some amazing things that can be done. One example is something that Art Bell did 20-some years ago. We got some recent examples of the same thing, but Art Bell, on his radio show, he told people to visualize rain over Texas, because the whole state was dried up. They hadn't rained for 3-4 months. There was brush fires everywhere. Cattle was dying. Towns were running out of water. So he asked his listeners to visualize rain over Texas. Later that morning and the next day, there were thunderstorms all over Texas. The weather forecasters came out and said, "We're dumbfounded. This shouldn't have happened." There were no moisture anywhere in the computer models that could create this rain, but it happened. Well, I know what happened. It is the mastermind created by the listeners on that show that created the rain. We did the same thing with a hurricane coming up around last fall, up around Cuba, and they were heading to Florida. There was a Category 4, fizzled out over 90 miles to Florida to a tropical storm. And we even helped a lady that had pancreatic cancer, and created a mastermind around her. And 2 months later, there was no cancer in her body. These are the kinds of things that can be done. In fact, I wrote a book on this, on other things, science, higher conscious thinking, and how to access universal consciousness is the title of the book. In that book, I explain how we can speak with the universal consciousness, how we can summon things, because we ask for things that we already are, and when we do, then good things happen. In fact, in the back of the book, I even show people how we can do time travel. So it's kind of interesting. Go have a look at it on Amazon. You'll see all the different subjects in there.
Very interesting. Going back to what you mentioned, Art Bell was a friend of mine. And, we would talk a couple times a month for years and years. In fact, I talked to him just a few days before he passed. When he did that thing over Texas with the rain, afterwards, I talked to him on the phone, and he called me up, and he said, I'm not going to do that again because I am scared that, I could create something like that to happen. But maybe by doing that might change something else and something worse could happen. And he didn't want to be, how can you say it, responsible emotionally if something negative happened, creating rain and stuff. And he had mixed feelings about that very heavily after that.
It's very understandable. And from his point of view, he did not understand the fabric of the master plan. There is a master plan for everybody and everything. And it usually go according to the master plan. Some of us, in our master plans, it is laid in that we are going to be able to discover these things and we are going to be able to do things for mankind. And when we have the safety valve included in the requests that we are sending back to the universal storehouse of creative energies in the universal consciousness, when we tell the universal consciousness that this is what we want for the good of all concerned, when we use the safety valve like that, our slate is clean, and whatever happens is according to the master plan. So I am not worried about doing it. Besides, we're careful too. We know that it can be abused, and we're going to try to avoid doing that. But there is so much. People should start looking into quantum mechanics a little bit, because there is some phenomenal knowledge there. You can find out who you are and how you can communicate with that universal source, both for information and resources. And in the book here about spiritual science on Amazon, in fact on my website too, that Aage-Nost.com, you'll find it there too. And if you go look at the different titles in there, when you get to about the last chapter, I think it's the next to the last chapter, talk about time travel. There is a way that you actually can do this. On my website, on that website I mentioned to you, on page 8 in the picture gallery, I have picture evidence in form of pictures of time travel, actually time slippage and time travel. So go look at that, and you're going to be quite interesting. I played with time travel for almost 2.5 decades. And in 2003, the BBC television came over to the United States and did a TV documentary on time travel with Michio Kaku and Green and myself. I demonstrated a small electronic device that I have had some very strange experiences with, and talk about that on the video also. And on Broadcast Team Alpha, we have 2 or 3 shows on there on time travel that quite interesting, because there is a way to do this. There are actually people out there teaching how to do it. I don't really teach how to do it, because then you kind of take on a little more responsibility too. I am just telling people what I have been able to do.
Interesting. And that sounds like another complete show. You know that.
Oh, yes, it is.
Yeah. Now, hey, James has a couple questions, and then we're going to go on break, and then I have you for about 15 minutes after it, where you can tell people about your books and all that stuff again. Now, James, what's your questions?
Yeah, the one question concerning Mars. The face on Mars and the pyramids supposedly on Mars, what's with those pictures? What's your take on those?
Well, the face on Mars is that. It's a face. Because in, 1972 or so, when they took the first pictures of it, and it looks like a face. Later on, of course, then they had changed it around so it looks like, still a little too symmetrical to be just nature, but they took away the features and made it look like, we don't know, and you shouldn't know either.
Yeah, you're right. And the other question I got, we sent a rover up there, like 10 or 12 years ago, and it was supposed to last like 6 months. And as far as I know, it's still working. And I've seen pictures where it looks like it's been cleaned off and taken care of. What's your theory on that?
It's probably done by the guy that I have a picture on the documentary, possibly. It's hard to say. There's another picture also that is not on the documentary, but I have on the website. You'll find it there if you look. It looks like a person standing next to the rover, reaching up towards the top camera. The shadow on the ground show that person. It looks just like a person standing there. So, yeah, there is people up there cleaning it off.
Yeah, I've seen that picture, actually. It is pretty fascinating, to say the least. Yeah. But other question I have for you, have we been going to the moon secretly since 72, or we haven't been back, do you think, because of what's there?
We've been going back and forth quite a bit. And, in fact, the Germans, they went to the moon the first time in right about 1942, possibly 43, in a Aage 3. And that goes into the German flying saucers. They, at the end of the war, the records between the Russians and the Americans, they found that there was 163 known flying discs built in Germany. And started with the early models, up to the Aage 1, 2, and 3, and 4. The Aage 3 had the red Mercury engine in it, and I had the test results from the Aage 2. That was the Aage. Gosh, I forget now. 2 or 3. One of them from the ground to 60,000 feet of altitude, straight up against gravity in 3 minutes.
Oh wow!
It takes an airliner about 20 minutes to get to 40,000 feet.
Yeah. Whatever happened to those 167 saucers?
Oh, many of them, or most of them, were flown out before the end of the war, a few days or weeks before, and they flew them to South America and to Argentina, and they also flew them down to the Antarctic base 211 down there, which is still operating, and there is close to 2 million Germans down there now in that base, a huge cavern underneath the inside the mountain there. There's going to be some more revelations coming out of Antarctica fairly soon. And yeah, it's all there. And the Germans, they built these flying discs, and the Aage 4, they built, as far as we know, they built 2 of them. One of them was flown out, and we don't know where it went. The other one was sent to Mars. Now, the one that went to Mars, they lost contact with, and nobody knows what happened to it. I kind of think that it probably broke up or hit a meteorite, or got damaged and somehow got destroyed, because they put nuclear material instead of the red mercury fluid inside the Aage, the Aage, which was the engine in the ship. It put nuclear material in it, and it made the metal brittle.
Okay, well, we need to go on break. We'll be back in 2.5 minutes. You're listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio.
Vamos fazer regaço, regaço. Rafa Gomes, digam no beat, não perde tempo escolhendo a roupa, porque no fim eu sei que vou tirar. Fala tchau pro seu batom na boca e fala Oi pra quem te faz pirar. E se você já tá com a mesma sensação, pode vir